Further escalation in the overall conflict. Initial media reports now indicating that UAE has attacked Iran. This is what Jerusalem Post is now reporting. This indeed could spell a new turning point in the overall trajectory of this conflict, as reports indicating that the UAE has now attacked Iran. We are looking at a fresh escalating point. All right, let me quickly go across to my guest, a very eminent one, joined in by John Feiner, who's a former Deputy NSA of the United States and also the co-host of the Long Game podcast. Many thanks to you for joining in, Mr. Feiner. What do you make of the initial information that's now trickling in that the UAE has also perhaps attacked Iran? Is this on expected lines, and is this spelling a new form of escalation in this conflict?
Well, the UAE hasn't confirmed these reports, at least not that I've seen, but this has been anticipated for some time. I know they've been weighing this decision in part because the UAE, I think more than any other country, has been on the receiving end of Iranian munitions, drones, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, since this war began. And after a certain point, they are under significant pressure, including from their own population, to show that they can defend themselves. They've been very successful at fending off these missiles, but the barrages continue. And so, at some point it was inevitable that they might get in, but let's see what they say. I will say there are at least a few other ways in which this conflict is escalating or could escalate. There have been attacks now in both directions on civilian infrastructure, including refineries and fuel storage sites in Iran and in the Gulf, and most importantly, desalination plants on both sides. There are many people in both Iran and even more in the Gulf who depend on desalination for their population's drinking water. There are reports that the U.S. and Israel, or one of the countries, might fund or encourage Kurds based in Iraq to go into Iran to fight the regime. That's another potential escalation. And then increasing reports in the U.S. about the possibility of either Israeli or U.S. ground forces going in at some point. So all of this is to watch in terms of how this conflict could escalate.
John, it's interesting that you highlight the overall impact in terms of the attacks, not just on the oil depots, but also on the desalination plants, which is why I want your assessment on how do you see this war shaping up into an environmental, energy crisis, and of course the impact of this on the in terms of a health crisis that we are seeing being orchestrated on both ends.
Well, wars always impact civilian population, maybe most of all, especially countries that are on the receiving end of munitions. There have been civilians killed in this conflict on both sides, some significant numbers. But what's different now is usually armies, according to established norms and international law, try to avoid targets that directly impact civilians. Much more than they impact militaries. They try to aim for military targets because that's what international law dictates. What you're seeing now is a shift on both sides where they seem to be targeting civilian infrastructure again, and that is going to increase the level of harm to civilians on both sides, which is obviously not a good thing.
John, let's also talk about the probable successor, whoever it's going to be, whether it's going to be Murtaba Khomeini or not, we do not know. But the United States and Israel have made it amply clear that they are going to carry on with the ideological beliefs that Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had. They will meet the same fate as the Ayatollah itself. How do you see the overall leadership now shaping up post-Ayatollah Ali Khamenei?
Well, so far, the Iranian regime is proving, I think, more resilient than war planners on the United States side or Israel's side expected. Many people have been taken out by this military operation, and others have stepped into the roles that were left vacant. And it seems likely that there probably is or will soon be a new supreme leader. I don't have any special insight into that. But what I will say is, I think what you said is probably exactly right. The ideology is very unlikely to shift. And in fact, it may even harden given this war that has been waged against Iran. And I think the notion that anybody else outside of Iran, President Trump talked a little bit about this, is going to play a role in choosing the supreme leader of Iran is far-fetched at best.
Do you think that Masoud Pezeshkian, the Iranian president's comments, have in fact also exposed the cracks within this transitional regime in Iran at the moment, which is strongly divided between Pezeshkian, even Ali Larijani and many others within the IRGC as well?
Well, I think the United States has been quite successful in Israel at basically denying Iran the ability to have total command and control over its forces. And so part of the result of that is you have units that are not getting direction, at least not clear direction from the top, and are going based on pre-existing guidance and instructions. This is a technique, by the way, on the part of the Iranians to preserve their ability to fight, even if command and control is severed from the very top. But what that sometimes means is units take matters into their own hands, maybe attack countries or targets that the political leadership might not want or intend. And so I think that is some of what you're seeing in terms of the president and others, foreign minister, coming out and saying Iran is going to do one thing, and then the fighters on the ground doing something different.
John, you said that the resilience of the Iranians is currently standing out right now. Before I quickly slip into a break, do you see that there have been strategic miscalculations by Washington over here? And whatever that they are trying to gain, which we will contemplate on in just a bit, can this be achieved through just air operations?
Well, look, I think there have been some degree of miscalculations on both sides. Clearly, the United States and Israel are dominating the military aspect of this conflict. But whether or not they're going to achieve their more maximalist military and political objectives still remains to be seen. And as I said, I think the Iranian regime has proven more resilient than maybe was expected. On the Iranian side, though, they have not been able to fight back to the same extent I think they believed they would. They make these bold claims, we're going to win militarily, we're going to lay siege to the countries that are supporting the United States, to U.S. forces. And they have been able to fight back to an extent, but they have not been able to impose substantial costs on the countries that are attacking them such that they can deter or dissuade the war from continuing. So I think both sides, to some extent, have overestimated their capabilities. But the military balance of success right now is with the U.S. and Israel. The political balance of success, I think, is still remains to be seen.
Okay, you're making some very interesting and invaluable points over here, which I really want to continue with. Going to request you to continue staying with me. I have compulsions to slip into a quick break. We'll be back in just a few minutes.